Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to today's Cathedra webinar. We are coming to you live on June 12th, 2025. For anybody who doesn't know yet, our Cathedra webinars get their name from the Creek word for learning. And today you're going to be learning all hazard preparedness and partnership. This is day 3 of the 4-day series. You'll be learning from your instructor, Dr. William R. Latchford, who's president of the Native Peacekeeper Consulting Group. My name is Brooke Warrington. I'm the Training and Development Specialist here at the Native Learning Center. We're also happy you could tune in for today's webinar. If you could follow along while I read the disclaimer aloud, please. This webinar provides a summary of fundamental concepts, requirements, and/or procedures within the allotted 90 minutes. The material discussed does not illustrate all possible scenarios that could be applicable. We also have our copyright infringement law printed here. This is just a friendly reminder that the webinar materials are protected by copyright, trademark, trade secret, and other intellectual property laws. If you need to access any of the recordings from the previous days, as well as PDFs of the slides, recordings of the days to come in the future, you can access all of that in the courses section, along with any of the other webinars we've put on here on our new learning platform. If you tune into a future webinar, like day 4 of the series tomorrow, you can just log in and click on that green banner at the top of your screen to join. We do ask that you join with listen-only capabilities because it just helps to cut down on any audio feedback. And if you find that your sound is coming out of the incorrect device, if you click on that telephone icon at the bottom of your screen, it'll bring up a list of your mic and speaker devices so you can select the proper output. We do have different ways to interact during today's webinar. We will primarily rely on use of the public chat. We do, of course, encourage class participation. So write in those questions, write in those comments. If you have any tech support issues, you can send them in and I will help to get you through it as best I can. If you don't have the public chat open, you can select public chat in the messages panel. There's also some helpful links for you in the shared notes, but I have also gone ahead and put the presentation slide link into the chat already for you. If you've joined and your mic is unmuted, you can go ahead and mute it down at the microphone icon. And if you ask something in the chat that you're worried that we missed, you could always use the hand raise feature to draw our attention to it. All right, if you don't mind taking a minute to introduce yourselves in the chat, let us know your name, where you're tuning in from, your work or your role in Indian country that probably led you to today's webinar, and your tribal affiliation, if you have one. You might be a tribal employee and you don't have one, that's okay too. Final note, try not to click on that red hand menu panel that's all the way to the left of your screen. It will pull you out of the webinar and take you to whatever you selected. But you can always just rejoin by clicking on the green banner. All right, folks, while you introduce yourselves in the chat, it is with great pleasure that I introduce your webinar instructor for today, Dr. William Latchford. And Dr. Latchford, I am making you presenter now.
All right. Thank you, Brooke. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us on day 3 of the All Hazard Preparedness and Partnership series. We encourage you, if you missed day 1 and 2, if you get time throughout your busy week, to revisit Native Learning Center's platform to view the first 2 webinars, just to take some information that you can take back to your tribal housing authority and possibly implement or fine-tune your current policies and procedures. So we appreciate you being with us today, and we hope tomorrow you'll be able to join us. But if not, again, Native Learning Center has a great system set up that allows for you to go back and watch all their webinars, not necessarily just our webinars that we're doing this week, but previous webinars in the past and also in the future that you'll be able to be a part of. So today we're going to go over emergency planning and response strategies. Again, this is day 3 of the series of All Hazard Preparedness and Partnership series. So it's important that we recognize that there's not a one-stop shop when it comes to emergency planning. And as we travel and navigate through these webinars, you'll see the vast majority of it is across the board, and it's not always going to apply square peg, square hole within your community. So just keep that in mind as we navigate through this training. As Brooke said, my name is Will Latchford. I'm a doctor of criminology. I have over 32 years of law enforcement, public safety experience. I was provided that opportunity from the Seminole Tribe in the early 90s. And through that opportunity, I was able to capitalize on working for one of the best tribes and government entities that are out there, and also they afforded me the opportunity to attend the top-notch leadership training and public safety training that you can obtain in the public safety emergency management world. So I'm very proud and honored to be affiliated with the Seminole Tribe. I hold a bachelor's degree in public administration from Barry University. My master's degree is in criminal justice, emergency management, and homeland security. And just most recently here in February, I obtained my doctorate degree in criminal justice from St. Leo University. So I'm very pro education and always a life learner. And I think when we look at emergency all hazard preparedness, it's something that we can always learn from. We can always learn from each other, and we can take these tools and we can navigate it and make them fluid. That's going to work for every crisis or event we deal with. As we know, we deal with a lot of things throughout the country, and across Indian country, we deal with a lot more issues that are specific to Indian country, which requires a lot more navigational tools and environments that you can use and work together with each other that you can share and modify to work within your community. So throughout my career, I've had the opportunity to travel around the country and respond to critical events that's happened in Indian country. So I've had that opportunity to firsthand witness that things aren't done the same in each community. Every community has a personality to it that requires specific attention, and that specific attention really works for that community. So we as public safety officials need to keep that in mind as we develop any plans when it comes to emergency management, is that it really should be based around the community that you're serving, and the partnership with that community is really the only way to success when it comes to your emergency planning. So we're honored to be here today. We're honored to partner with Native Learning Center and Brooke and her staff, Executive Director Georgette Smith, provide this platform and this opportunity to pass along this knowledge and skill to Indian country across the United States. So this is one of the top-notch premier training that I've been associated with, that we should all be proud of, that we have that ability to be part of and to gain that knowledge and skill. A little bit about Native Peacekeeper Consulting Group. It's a Native certified Seminole woman-owned business owned by Amy Osceola Latchford. It's a family-owned business that really is dedicated to providing advisory and professional level service and training that's tailor-made to the customer. Our mission is to empower organizations by providing comprehensive and sustainable safety solutions, by fostering partnerships to enhance safety effectiveness within every tribal community, by applying the philosophy of elevating public safety today for a safer tomorrow, clearly promoting Native American public safety. In order for public safety to be successful, and you'll hear me say it a couple times throughout the presentation, is that the community has to be part of anything that we do. And when we look at tribal housing, you cannot be successful unless you have that partnership when it comes to your community. So just keep that in mind as you navigate through your process of emergency planning, that the community has to have a big part in everything you do. Native Peacekeeper Consultant Group has a variety of services they provide, from educational training, from professional development, leadership training, policy development, planning, active shooter and active events that you may want to do from regards to tabletops, and as well as management assessments. And we provide a learning management system for training that can help organizations just enhance their credibility and their knowledge and skills and their ability to just provide that higher level service to the community that they serve. So we're honored to be able to present to you today. Just a caveat for this webinar, one of the things that we always like to recognize is that your government policy is very important to your success. And in order for that success to happen, we encourage you that if we run into any conflicts of anything that we go through the PowerPoint today, or I say something today that may be contradicting to your current policy, we refer you back to your policy to start that generation of conversation. Right? You can generate the conversation with your supervisor to determine if your policy is in line with the training today. or if it's not in line. And if it is in line, then your policy is right on, and you're at the highest level or highest standard. If it's not in line, you have the opportunity through that generation of that conversation, you have the opportunity to enhance your policy and bring it up to the standard it needs to be. If your policy is correct and something that I said is wrong, I encourage you to reach out to us and let's have that discussion, because we can all learn from each other. And it's something that as we look at policies and procedures and trainings, not one of us has all the answers, but working together and collaborating with each other, that's where success comes in. And that's where we're going to maximize the professional and organizational success we all desire. So as we look at today, again, we're going to go over Tribal Housing Authority's emergency preparedness. And as we go through the webinar today, what I would ask you to do is just keep in mind and kind of let it resonate with you a little bit, is that when we do emergency preparedness, we never want to take shortcuts, right? And we never want to take shortcuts because life safety is paramount. That's the first step and the most important step when it comes to emergency preparedness. So you never want to take shortcuts. And I put that out there because I believe it's important as life is moving so fast and we're traveling and navigating our daily lives when it comes to our profession in our communities. There's a high level of expectation on housing authorities to make sure that you're perfect every day, to make sure that level of service that you provide to your community is meeting the expectations of the community. And as we go through that expectation, a lot of times to meet those demands, we sometimes take shortcuts. And those shortcuts have a lot of different avenues that are at our fingertips, right? So we have the internet that can provide us information very, very frequently, very fast, right? We have AI now that's in the system that we can get on AI and we can type in some prompts and AI will provide us some information that's within that infrastructure. And those areas are all good. But what I share with you is that none of those areas know your community. None of those areas know tribal housing like you do. You're the subject matter expert in your community. You're the subject matter expert within tribal housing. And that to me is the most important piece that we need to continue to recognize in order for us to be effective. Right? We can have AI, we can have the internet, we can get information off of both of those. And they both present opportunities and challenges that can assist us as we navigate all hazard preparedness. But the piece here that is important and the most important is you as the tribal housing employee. So what I encourage you to do as you navigate just this webinar and as you move forward and navigate to the future is never sell yourself short. Always remember that you're the key component, that any success in your organization requires you to be part of that. So don't take any shortcuts when you do any emergency planning, because you're selling yourself short, you being the subject matter expert, and you're selling your community short. And that's one thing you do not want to represent. Your name is important, and that's one thing nobody can take away from you. So just keep that in your toolbox, that you never want to take shortcuts. It's easy to sometimes through your busy life to take the short path. What I encourage you is when you come across that and the short path is one of your decisions, don't take the short path. Do the right thing for yourself and your community and your tribal housing authority to make sure your all hazard preparedness plans are at the top notch within the industry and within your community. So as we look at the agenda today, we're going to go over several areas. We're going to look at the personal emergency plans. We're going to look at personal family plans and the preparedness within your communities. We're going to look at the supply kit assembly. What should that supply kit consist of? How do we build that out? And what's a way we can do that to where we're not impeding our everyday work, right? So we're going to talk about that a little bit. We'll talk a little bit about community communication and what that looks like in emergency all hazard preparedness. We'll talk a little bit about emergency plans, emergency operation plans, and kind of how they dovetail into the overall big picture. And then we'll close on training and community education, which is really a big part of any preparedness is to make sure the community is part of that training. And that training is not a one-off. That training has to be consistent, has to be frequent, and it really has to be modern to the fluid of the information that's changing, the process, the policies that change as you navigate every day. So we'll go over that. We'll spend about the next 80 minutes, 75 minutes going over the all hazard preparedness when it comes to the emergency preparedness for your community. Again, we want to honor every one of your communities. Your communities are unique, and every community, you cannot take the same answer and put it into your community. You have a lot of sovereignty issues, a lot of respected cultural and traditional issues that play into your planning, right? And there's nothing wrong with putting those, if you can, and it's appropriate for your cultural environment, is to put that cultural aspect and that sovereignty aspect within your policy, so everybody knows kind of the rules of the field, right? You just want your employees and your customers to know kind of how you're operating, what those rules are, and what's going to take for you to get them back to a little bit of normalcy. The other part is community resilience, right? We want to recognize how strong our community is. We want to evaluate how strong our community is, what the strength that they have, where their shortcomings are, and how well are they adapting to the change when a crisis happens, right? Because that really determines the temperature on as we move forward in a crisis, is how well is the community adapting to the new environment within the crisis. And that will help us, and it'll also alleviate stress. If we can identify that, it'll alleviate that pressure on us as a tribal housing authority when it comes to providing that level of service to our tenants. Excuse me. Some of the housing authorities, as some of the things that I want to pass along today, is housing authorities as an emergency response leader, right? A lot of times, and as we navigate forward, you're being thrusted as a housing representative into really an emergency responder. And you are. You may not have the title as an emergency responder as far as what people perceive an emergency responder or a public safety person is. But the reality is you're just as important as the public safety individuals that are out there. And you now are thrusted into, in the 21st century, you're thrusted in as an emergency responding leader for your community, because your tenants are going to look out for you. They're looking out for you to keep that community safe, right? From the aspect of the housing authority, right? They want to ensure that you, as the leader of tribal housing, is there to protect them and is going to do everything in your power, in your program, to protect them. They're looking at you to communicate with them. They're looking at you to provide them the most relevant information that's going to keep them safe so they can make personal preparedness decisions for them. All right. So they're looking at you at any moment during the day during that crisis to provide them with that details and that data so they can make the best decision for their family and themselves. You're also the leader when it comes to resource management. We talked about that yesterday as far as how you deploy your resources, how you're going to distribute the resources, and really how you deal with that human capital when it comes to deploying your personnel. The other part is as you navigate, just like every other tribal program, you have cultural preservation that you have to acknowledge, and you have to make sure that's part of your process. You know, you're protecting your heritage is very important, and that should just be as important as anything you do out there, because that's something we can hold on to help us drive into the future and get through the crisis. So Tribal Housing Authority serves as a critical infrastructure during every emergency or crisis. You just don't provide a physical shelter, but you serve as that point, that head point of communication and coordination for your tenants. So that's a unique position to be in. So I challenge all of you to accept and embrace the way people look at you, and put that responsibility on you as you navigate your position, right? Somebody saw something in you as a leader or even as an employee that you were going to be a great asset to your team, regardless if you're at the top or if you're at the bottom or in the middle of the organization. They saw how well you are. They saw the worth that you bring to the table. So always embrace that responsibility that's thrusted upon you. And when you deliver emergency preparedness and you develop emergency preparedness plans prior to the crisis, just keep that at the forefront, that you've been thrusted and somebody saw something in you that's special, and they see your worth. They see that you're going to be able to carry out whatever that function is to keep people safe. As we look at Module 1, personal and family emergency planning, I think this is very key, and I think sometimes we assume across a lot of professions, we assume that households and families know what to do. I think we send information out through the communication channels, and we hope that the families are really attaching to it. But one of the things I found in my career is people hear it, but they may not relate to it. And they may not relate to it because they just don't have that connection just yet. They haven't been involved in any crisis. They haven't experienced any event that they can connect to what is being told to them. So you're passing along good information to them through your communication channels, but they're not really connecting that information to an event or a stressful event, or really how it applies. They have that thought and then they get busy doing something in their life, and then that thought that you provided kind of went away. So as we look at personal and family emergency planning from a tribal housing, we want to make sure that you, from a housing program, you continue to push the information out, but keep it at the individual's forefront so they never forget it, right? So when you look at assessing households that are in your community and tenants that are there for you, you want to help them identify where they're at. You want to help them identify what's going to keep them safe. You really kind of see, even though you may not live with them, you in a tribal community, you have the inherent aspect where you know a little bit more than the outside community. So you can help the households keep all that information current. You can help them keep everything relative, so where they don't forget it. So you want to help them identify the members or the elders or the children who have disabilities and pets. You want to keep all of that information within the housing framework. So when a crisis happens, you can ask those questions to your residents. When you do training, you can ask those questions to your residents, and you can give them specific requirements, and you can identify specific needs that they may need if a crisis does hit. So you want to not do it for them, but you want to be that tool for them. You want to be that resource that you can help them assess their own household, right? You want to recognize that housing has a communication plan. You as the housing authority, that the families, the tenants, have a communication plan. You want to remind them that you have a communication plan. You're going to deliver the information to them. It's important for them to deliver the information to their families, to their children, to their relatives. So you can present and you can develop processes within tribal housing that'll help create contact lists for the communities, right? Out of the area connections, determine how family members will communicate with each other. And you can do that when they come in and they file the paperwork to live within your community, when they sign the leases. You can create these documents beforehand that will help you develop this all hazard plan to really be all inclusive. And they won't even realize it. They won't even realize the information that you're asking. You're actually going to take that information and you'll be able to use it if a crisis does occur. You'll be able to use it to support them, to support the tenants that live with you, to communicate possibly with their outside relatives to get them help that they may need, right? Part of the process too is you want to let them know that part of the being a tenant, since they don't own the home, there is a responsibility that you, tribal housing, has, that they may be displaced. They may have to leave somewhere because of the damage within the house or the building that they're in. The infrastructure may be damaged during the crisis, right? You want to be able to assist them in making that designated location so they can reconnect with their family outside of the housing community that you're in, right? So you can help them select a certain area that they can communicate and keep part of their personal preparedness plan, right? So you can be involved with all this aspect, right? And it's not about forcing yourself into somebody's home. It's just about being supportive and educating them and providing them information so they recognize that the information you're providing is important, right? The other part, and lastly, is to assign roles, right? A lot of times when we look at families, we kind of think that the person who does the most is going to do it all for us, right? We have to have those discussions. And from a tribal housing standpoint, you're in a good position where you can talk to families and you can ask them questions. You're not going to tell them who's assigned to what role, but you can ask questions as you navigate through somebody's personal preparedness plan, to ask them to talk about it with you. You can ask them who's gonna help the elderly person in the house, who's going to drive them over to their family relative's house, right? Who's going to be the person that we need to look for after the crisis to contact, that's going to kind of bring everybody together, know where everybody's at, that point person, right? So you can ask all these different types of questions to the tenants to help assign roles and help them develop their personal preparedness plan. And as you navigate with them through their personal preparedness plan, it's going to arm you with a lot of good information so you can navigate your job, so you can navigate what you can do to provide that concierge service to your members. It's all about taking care of people. And as a service-oriented program, as tribal housing is, it's all about taking care of people. So I encourage you, this process that I present today is think outside the box, right? Think outside the box. You're not trying to get into somebody's life or tell somebody how to live. What you're doing is you're being a support mechanism for them, because not a lot of people deal with emergencies in their life. No one wants to deal with emergencies all the time. We want to be happy. We want to be relaxed. We don't want to deal with crisis. As far as Tribal Housing Authority, we have that opportunity through our everyday interaction to make sure people are prepared. And how we do our job, we can interact with them. We can assist them on developing personal family emergency plan, so they are as prepared as best they can within the community that they're living in and that we're managing. So as we navigate into assisting them, you have to look at different aspects, right? So people that live in your community are, I look at multi-generational and have different issues, right? They have different needs when it comes to things that they have to be effective during emergency planning, right? So when we look at elders, a lot of elders are on medication, right? So we want to make sure we can provide, again, not telling them what to do, but provide them reminders or even an easy way to develop the plan, a medication management plan, right? We can provide that when they sign on to be tenants with us, right? We can develop plans just to get them, kind of force them in a polite manner to get prepared. It's in their best interest to get prepared. So when we look at elders, are they mobile? We know if they're going to be in a handicap related facility. We already know that in advance, right? Traditional medicine is another aspect that we know that a lot of elders may have in their possession, right? The comfort items, when something happens, everybody wants those comfort items or those cultural items that we don't want to leave behind, right? We can plan all that out prior to an event taking place, and we can have those discussions, because if we have those discussions and we create a plan on it and we revisit the plan and we train on the plan, it's going to be a lot easier when something happens. Muscle memory is going to kick in, and we're going to be able to provide that high level of service because the residents are going to take ownership in their personal preparedness plan. As far as the children, age appropriate when it comes to emergency roles, each age, especially children, right? We all want to protect the children. We want to make sure during the event that we have those conversations. From school emergency procedures, you all have bus stops within your communities. Those things we want to talk about. We want to talk about that with our clients. Again, it's not running their life. It's being that support mechanism to ensure that they have all these mechanisms in place. And we can provide that by creating a template or a framework for them when they sign on to become part of our residential community, right? Again, kids have comfort items that they want to take with them. And again, simple instructions. You can't talk to an elder like you talk to a child. You can't talk to a child like you talk to a middle-aged adult. Somebody who's disabled, again, you can't talk to them like a child or a middle-aged adult. So we have to recognize the fact that with multi-generation and different people that we're dealing with and the customers that we have, in order for us to be effective in emergency planning, we must account for the diverse community that we serve. right? And each family member can contribute to the overall personal preparedness plan and make it successful for everybody, to include the traditional and cultural values, right? It's very important that we stay connected and grounded to who we are. When we look at family emergency plan template, again, you can create this from a housing standpoint to where it's just a fill in the blanks for your tenants, right? And I encourage you to do that. Is it extra work? It's a little bit extra work for you, but I look at it this way. If you don't do it, there's a lot of families who aren't going to sit down. I've encountered throughout my career where I've had community meetings. I've talked to people and I see people shaking heads saying, yeah, I agree with you. We have to have an emergency plan. And then when I go visit them and I ask them, hey, let me look at your emergency plan. Let me look at your family plan if a crisis happens. What are you doing? Oh, we don't have one. We just know, right? That's the comment. And I think that's prevalent throughout society. The reality is, if we can provide them the tools to where it's easier for them just to fill in the blanks, right? Because I believe a lot of people just don't know what to do. They may not want to admit that they don't have it or they don't know what to do. Well, if we can provide that jumpstart for them, that's what we want to do. And I think tribal housing is in a great position to provide that jumpstart. So if you don't have a template for a family emergency plan for your tenants, I encourage you, if you want assistance on what that should look like, you can always follow up with me on that. But by creating that physical copies so they can keep, they can fill out, and then possibly you can have a copy of it. You know, a lot of times people want to know, once they get it filled out, they want somebody to know, God forbid something does happen, they want somebody else to know what their plan is, just so they may not have a lot of family, right? That is the piece that I think tribal housing can really be impacting in any tribal community. And this isn't a one-off document. It can be revisited quarterly, annually, you know, and can be regularly discussed in community meetings. You can have barbecues or community outreach programs that you bring it up and you talk about it, and you sit and you just do one-on-ones. One of the other areas is tribal inspections. You'll hear me talk about that a couple times throughout this presentation. Tribal inspections, you know, I've been on tribal inspections where, as the public safety person, and I watch people's behavior, and it's intrusive to somebody's home, right? They know it's part of the process. They accept it's part of the process, but they're uneasy because their house is getting inspected. They appreciate it, but they're still uneasy because that's their personal home. A family emergency plan is a topic that you can talk about to kind of drop that uneasiness from them, so they're not so focused on the inspection, and they're focused on you just being a supportive housing authority, right? You're still doing your job, you're doing what you need to do, but you're taking their mind off of that inspection, or maybe that uneasiness of you being in their home. So just something to consider. There's different ways that you can present the template, but if you don't have a template that you provide to your community, it's something that I highly encourage, and I think it's something that you can capitalize on. The other part of this family emergency plan template is, how do you market it? How do you get the information out to them, right? So if they're new tenants, it's easy. You can sit down and talk to them and describe it to them, right? But when you're doing a new initiative like this, or you're doing the quarterly discussion or the biannually discussion, you know, there's different aspects of it, right? A lot of the reservations here in the South, you know, they have the local news media, right? So they're in the middle of cities, so there's a local news media that don't have the tribal news as prevalent as the outside municipality or the county news, right? So that's an avenue that you could use. They have the newspapers. Again, it's an outside newspaper. It's not the tribal newspaper. You have Twitter, Facebook, the internet portal that you may have from your tribal perspective. There's Code Red notification systems out there. Nexus, which is another communication network system you can use. Easy texting software and simple texting software are out there that you can send the message out to remind people about family emergency plans, right? You want to look at incentivizing your community to take a buy-in, to buy into this family emergency plan template. Keep it up to date, keep it at the forefront, and market it. You want to market it so it's important to them. You want to let them know it's important to you. Their life is important to you. And it's not just them as a human capital. You have pets, you have livestock, You have different aspects of people's life that you can highlight. And when they see that you think it's important to them, they're going to recognize it, that you appreciate who they are, what they represent, what they have. And they're gonna appreciate that to buy in, right? It's all about human behavior and connecting, having that connecting with your tenants. So just like webinars like this, you can host a webinar with your community, once a quarter, just to get that information out there. So you have a lot of different aspects, but it's not a one-off. So all the things I named, from Twitter, Facebook, the internet portal, you have to evaluate. And as I'm saying this, I want you to think about, what's your communication tools you use to get the information out, right? How many tools do you have? When I was in my previous career before I retired, there was so many times that we would sit around the table and talk about, how are we getting this out, right? We'd put it on Facebook. We'd put it on the internet portal. We'd go to community meetings. We'd have the officers and firefighters go door to door. We'd use texting mechanisms. We'd use code red to get the information out, because not everybody is on the same pathway. So there's a lot of software that's out there, but not everybody's on Facebook. Not everybody is on the internet portal. Not everybody has a cell phone, right? And so you have to figure out, how are you going to connect with your tenants? And it's important when it comes to the family emergency plan. So when you look at the template itself, again, it's not a one-off when they just sign on. I think that's a good entry point. But I think you have to look at, what are those communication aspects that you can continue to keep this at the forefront, so they buy in and they always keep an updated family emergency plan template. Part of the issue too is you can use, through this communication gap, you can use a lot of resources within your community, right? You have elders, a lot of tribes, which I see, and it's very admirable, is they really cater to the elders. It's important to recognize the elder population, and the elders come with wisdom. They come with information we all can gain from, regardless of who you are or how old you are. You can gain from the elders that are around. So if you partner with the elders and provide information, just as a simplistic direction, they can help you get that message out, right? You can have community interconnections, right? You have sporting teams. You may have a sports team that lives within your community. You can use them as another leverage to create that networking piece, right? Traditional oral traditional storytelling is very important. Bring your culture or your language programs into your community and let them talk about how the old days, before the internet, before we all had cell phones, before there was TV, really what our ancestors did to survive during these emergencies, because emergencies aren't new. It's new on how we're dealing with them, because the society has grown, society has more resources. But the reality is, emergencies have been around, and I think we can learn from the elder and the previous generations that are still with us. We can learn on how they did things through storytelling. That's important, right? And people learn from that because it's a relaxed setting. It's a setting that we don't feel threatened in, and we can feel safe when the storytellings are going on. We can feel safe to recognize, maybe I'm not doing this so well, or maybe I can do this better, or maybe, I'm doing this wrong and I need to fix it. So it provides you that opportunity through storytelling that you can share that information. You can create that environment from a tribal housing perspective. You can bring everybody together and have a storytelling evening when it comes to barbecues, or even just a housing meeting, and put 45 minutes aside to where somebody can come in and talk about how families did it in the past. Because again, this is not new. It's new on how we're doing things. And as we evolve into the future, it's going to continue to change. So we need to capitalize on the past to make our future better. Understand the local landscapes and natural resources that can provide shelter, water, and the substance during emergencies. One of the things that I know the reservations try to keep everything in the reservation itself, but we also want to look at what's outside the reservation, just in worst case scenario. You want to look at what is out there from a housing perspective, so that way you can possibly, if need be, in worst case scenario and last resort, you could tap into the outside when it comes to emergency planning, and you can prepare that to where it doesn't offend or impact any of the traditional or cultural values within your tribe. Cultural specific supply consideration, when we look at, assembling emergency supply kits. I jumped a slide here. When we look at module 2, assembling emergency supply kits, water, food, medicine, first aid kits, the medication, traditional medicine, just eyeglasses, hearing aids, walkers, batteries for hearing aids, personal hygiene kits. We want to look at tools and safety items, flashlights. I know here in Florida, they have tax-free week that they actually have 2 or 3 of them that are going on this year that, we want to encourage people to go out. So if you're a tribal housing authority and your state has the ability to provide that opportunity for tax-free week or items that they can get at discount, put flyers out. Let them know that this is an opportunity to save money and get the resources that they need for that crisis. And it's something that they can save money on and get it at a cheaper price. We all like things when it's cheaper. We can use that to our advantage. So think outside the box when it comes to those essentials. What we did at the Seminole Tribe, we found that during hurricanes and when the power was out for 3 weeks because of the hurricanes went through and the water was contaminated because of the power being out, what we did was we went ahead and purchased food buckets, right? There's different ways that you can provide emergency kits where we provided food buckets that had 25 days worth of food in each bucket, and all it took was water. Well, we had a policy and a program in place where we bought water from distributors throughout Florida. So we were providing them water. They already had the food buckets, and it provided them the opportunity to have those essentials during the emergency, right? So they took those food buckets and they can put them into the supply kits when they're preparing if an event is coming. So you want to kind of think outside the box and just provide that opportunity so you can continue to support them. Again, when we look at cultural specific supplies, if you have non-tribal members that work for you, it's very important to allow them the opportunity to sit with your traditional folks that are in the community so they understand and they can have those conversations and they understand kind of how to navigate their traditional medicine and what needs to be brought. One of the things we did from a public safety standpoint, sometimes we would be with the medicine man. We would go out with the traditional folks into the community so they could get the medicine, get the medicine in the Everglades, right? So we were just there to guide them to make sure that they had that easy access during the storm or after the storm. So from a housing standpoint, try to identify any cultural issues that are in your community that you may be able to think outside the box with, right? It may not be in the umbrella that we traditionally think that is a housing responsibility. But the reality is that if we take it, it's always our responsibility how we can complement our community. When it comes to cultural specific items, we have that opportunity during emergency preparedness that we can provide that opportunity to make sure that everybody in the community has those cultural items, the traditional items they need. And it's not in the middle of the crisis, so it doesn't put anybody in harm's way. So it's something you may want to consider. I also recognize some tribes may not want to put that in policy, so it would be one of those unwritten policies, but that's okay too. There's nothing wrong with it not being in policy, as long as everybody knows and you can sit around and talk about it and know what those expectations are to meet those cultural needs and those traditional needs. That's okay too. It's all about taking care of people that you serve. Building a kit with limited resources, right? So what I would tell you is that you have an opportunity to where it's not a one-off. You don't have to do this in one night or in one day. You can have these kits built. And what I would encourage you from housing, if you can do this, if you can build these kits for your tenants, it would go very smooth for you. And I think you would get a buy-in because some people just don't want to do it. Their life's too busy and they just may not be capable of doing it. So you can create the opportunity to ask for volunteers to turn in non-perishable foods, maybe flashlights, and do a drive in your community where you can get these items from people in your community, and then you put these kits together, right? So in 1 month, just the basic essentials. You can ask people to turn in, a 12 or 24 pack of water, right? Canned foods, flashlights, batteries. Then the next month you can go to first aid. You can do health and safety. You can do first aid, of course, medication. You don't want the illegal medication, but maybe aspirin, maybe cough medicine, NyQuil, children's Tylenol, just things you can buy over the counter, toothbrushes, toothpaste. You can build these kits. Documentation you can do the third month, right? A lot of times we can go on the internet and we can find different aspects of Excel spreadsheets that help us document different areas. There's knock boxes, what they call, that are you may be able to purchase them from a housing standpoint through your budgets, or you can work with companies like Knockbox that provide you a box that's secure, that people can put their important paperwork in, right? And their birth certificates and their driver's licenses, social security cards, tribal ID cards. You can work with companies that will work with you at a discounted price, or maybe even give you the information for free as just a partner, right? So you can do that in another month, right? The fourth month, you can look at somebody putting in tools and supplies, asking for people to turn in screwdrivers, and maybe drills or radios and batteries, just different things that are going to work for your community. During the holidays, it's done all the time. Take that methodology and use it to your advantage to build these kits for your tenants, right? Let people are willing to help. People want to help each other. I believe that overall people really want what's right. They want to help people, and they want to make themselves feel good. And how better is it when someone can donate something for the betterment to save somebody's life or help somebody during a crisis? So you can build these kits out. You don't have to do it overnight, but you can start a program. You can start it next Monday. You can do the flyer tomorrow's Friday, do the flyer tomorrow, and then Monday you can start. Or July 1st you can start, where you start your first month and you identify what those basic essentials are and ask people to turn in items over the month, right? And before you know it, it'll be like Christmas, where people are turning in toys and gifts, and then you can build your kits from that standpoint. So it's just an idea that, but by taking this framework every month, families can be provided with kits that are supplied by tribal housing. That's not going to impact their financial stream, right? It's not going to impact them, and they're going to get a little bit and be a little bit better off to protect themselves and their family. And you, as the Tribal Housing Authority, was part of that success. You were able to get that done for them. And when you look at these kits, you want to look at different things. So you want to look from a home aspect, right? Home kits. You can look at comprehensive supplies for about 3 to 5 days, right? Stored waterproof containers, cooking supplies, sanitation items, home repair kits, right? Tarps, tape, just different things that for your environment that people are going to need. Vehicles, right? A lot of times our vehicles either get damaged or something happens to our vehicles. Start looking at what you can do to provide to help your community out from a vehicle kit. You can create vehicle kits with jumper cables. You don't have to use the old school long wire jumper cables. They have the little boxes now that jump the box. You can ask for volunteers. You can partner with these suppliers that want to get their information out. They want to get their products out there. They want to test their products. So you can work with suppliers and distributors and partner. And sometimes they'll give you that for no cost, because they want to get their product out there. Blankets and sleeping bags, pillows are an important item that you can have across from a home kit, vehicle kit, and then even work in a school kit. Road flares is another issue, right? When people are driving around after a crisis, their car may be broken down. They don't have those safety equipment within their car. You can provide these emergency kits to them, thinking outside the box to make sure their all hazard preparedness personal plan is really full and enhanced at the highest level. Work in school kits. A lot of times, when crises happen, clothes get ruined, and the family's crushed because everything that child needed for school is left in the path of the storm or whatever that crisis was. Backpacks, lunch boxes. You can work with your communities to create these kits. And even at some initiative that you can do from a housing standpoint. We all know when school starts, maybe have a school picnic or back to school picnic within your tribal housing community, where you can provide them school backpacks, you can provide them lunch boxes, you can provide them pencil cases and markers and highlighters. Just a little token that you're able to show them that you want to be part of their team. You don't want to tell them how to live. You don't want to tell them how to control their life. You just want to be part of their team. You want to support them and get them ready for any emergency that may come upon them within the community. As we look at, some of the drills, when you're sitting around with your residents or somebody come and visit you, you can run this drill by them, right? You can say, look, let me talk to you a little bit about this 10-minute evacuation priority exercise that you should do with your family. It's a good test. It's a good opportunity to see, how good you are. And if a crisis happens, what ends up happening, right? How do you deal with that crisis? So within 10 minutes, right? That's the limited time you have to evacuate. What 5 items are you going to grab, right? And then one, prepared strategy saves time, right? So you want to explain that to them. If you had just 10 minutes to evacuate your home, what 5 items would you prioritize? It presents the opportunity for the exercise to help families identify what's most critical for them, right? What documents are needed, right? And it will encourage them to start thinking about how can they prepare themselves and get ready for that emergency if God forbid it was ever to come, right? It's the grab and go concept, right? It's the grab and go box or the backpack that you can just grab, put stuff in it. You know what needs to be put in it. You can get your family together and you're out the door and you're going to safety, right? This little 10-minute exercise, you can just have the conversation in a non-threatening way and a non-crisis way and just see that thought-provoking discussion or that thought-provoking mindset that people, you're going to bring it to the forefront. They may not go into to really deep detail with you when you're talking to them, but I guarantee you when they leave you and they go back home, they're going to be thinking about the 10-minute evacuation exercise that you can provide or that discussion you had with them that they can provide to their family to keep them safe. Module 3, staying informed from a community communication. Cell phones we talked about it the last 2 times or last 2 webinars. Cell phones are something we all live with and we kind of get all our information from, right? That's kind of even with laptops, cell phones are really a priority because it's easy, it's convenient. We get our weather service from our cell phone, right? May not necessarily be the weather radio, but I know there's still a lot of people that have weather radios that are out there, and that information still comes to us, right? You may have a tribal alert system within your tribe. Some counties and cities and reservations still have the alarm bell that goes off when a tornado comes. You have the social media networks, right? There's a whole bunch of social media issues that are out there on social media channels, right? The question that you should ask yourself is, how do you get your messaging out, right? When we're sitting here talking today on the webinar, I want you to think about how do you get your information out so your tenants stay informed, right? In a crisis, not in an everyday setting, but how do you get your information out in a crisis? If you went out and you spoke to your tenants that live in the community and you asked them, hey, let me ask you a question. When an emergency happens, what do you expect from us? Where do you think the communication is going to come from, right? They're probably going to give you a high-level answer, but it's probably not going to be as in detailed as what you want. And the reason for that is probably because they're unsure really how that information is, right? So you're starting that conversation and you're actually providing yourself the opportunity to see what level your community is as far as expectation is from the communication aspect that you deliver to them. So you want to look at what communication foundations do you use to get that information out there. Before the event, during the event, after the event. Those are those three areas that you want to make sure you look at as far as communication, and see what those responses are, right? When you talk to your community, that's the best solution that's going to help you create the perfect plan, is talking to the community and asking them what their expectations are from the community, where they would like to see that information come from. What is the best avenue for them to get it? Someone may tell you Facebook. Someone may tell you Snapchat. Someone may tell you Instagram. Someone may tell you, I want you to call me. That provides that opportunity for you to know, now I need 6 or 7 different communication criterias in my policy to get that information out. So you want to make sure your tenants stay informed throughout the entire process, from the beginning to the middle to the end. Again, the emergency communication pathways, your job is difficult. You have to brief tribal council. You have to provide them information. You have to provide emergency management information. You have to provide your employees information. You have to coordinate with your employees on what that response is going to be, right? So there's a communication software or network that you're going to require, you're going to need to just get the information to your employees. Your employees are important, and they're the ones that are delivering the information out to the community. How does that information flow to them? Is it consistent? Is it accurate? These are the questions you want to ask yourself. You want to ask them, and then identify what needs to improve. Your staff, you want to see where they live, right? If they're not on the reservation at the time the event happens, how are you getting a hold of them, right? Where do they live? Were they impacted by that same crisis, right? We had people that were supposed to show up at a shelter. They never showed up because they were impacted by the storm. They couldn't get in, right? We had another event where people just didn't want to come to work because they were afraid to drive. They were afraid to drive because the hurricane was so impactful. They were afraid to drive, so they didn't want to come to work. We couldn't get a hold of them. So our plan was, okay, we're going to send a team out to their house. We knew where everybody lived. We mapped all their addresses beforehand. So this was in our policy where everybody was at. We were able to send staff to them to make sure that they were okay and find out what was going on. So you want to make sure your housing staff is taken care of. So if you don't have a plan, a communication plan within your housing unit, I highly encourage you to make sure that you know where your staff lives. Make sure you have redundancy cell phone numbers or contact numbers for them. Know what their address is. Map out where they live. So that way, if you need to check on them and you need to see where they're at, if they don't show up for work, they may need you. They may be hurt. You may be that lifeline. So it's something that is important, not only during crisis, but it may happen on an average day. We had an individual who went missing, who worked for one of the tribal programs. They went missing and they got in a car accident, one car accident in a rural area, right? They didn't show up at home. We knew they didn't show up at home. We ended up calling all their contact people. We went to their house. We looked at their house. We sent police to their house. We traced their path to and from work, right? We came across them on a side road that we thought they may have traveled as a shortcut going home, right? We were able to do that because we had the information when it comes to their employees. We had the information that we can provide welfare checks on the housing staff. So human capital is important. So as we talk about all hazard plans for your tenants, keep this in mind. You want to also do it for your employees as well, because they are important. Your employees are important because those are the ones that are going to deliver the service to your community. So it's very important that you acknowledge that they need that attention too. So it's not all about the community. It's all about your program as well. And it's all inclusive. And the last thing is you want to look at as far as emergency alerts for your community, what those instructions are going to be, and working with other programs for the vulnerable individuals that live in your community. And you want to make sure it's documented. You want to document all these things. So if you had to replay what happened, you can paint that picture for whoever's asking for any audit. So you want to make sure that from your resident standpoint, you have a good, clear communication plan in place. and that it's something that you can create a toolkit with when it comes to, again, going back to a toolkit. Those several other toolkits that we discussed earlier. You can have a communication toolkit that you can provide data and a flow chart, how the communication is going to work, what they can expect. And you get all this information by having those conversations with them. One of the challenges that I always ran into, and was probably the most frustrating thing for me, because when you're dealing with a crisis, as a lot of things are being tossed at you. And now you need to message and market the information out, get it out to the community, get it out to tribal council, get it out to the other programs, right? So I found myself, and I saw leaders in housing and public works, I found them struggling with the same thing. We didn't have a good enough communication plan. So what I instructed emergency management to do was create templates of messaging, because we knew a lot of times a template could be made. A predetermined message can be made in a template, and then all you have to do is massage it. What we were doing was we were creating the message from scratch every time we had to create a message to send out. So we learned from that and those struggles, and it was taking a lot of time from housing, from emergency management, public safety. It was taking a lot of time because we had to stop what we were doing and create this message to the community. The reality is we can create, and I encourage you, create pre-drafted messages from an email standpoint, from a voice standpoint, from a memo standpoint, however you communicate out. Create pre-drafted messages for every common scenario that you know you're going to encounter, and make sure those clear procedures for messages are in line with the approval process and how you're going to disseminate it. Right? If you have all these things in place beforehand, then all you have to do is kind of do a once over and add in those key components. And so instead of taking a half hour to write a message or 45 minutes to write a message, you can look at the message that's pre-drafted, and all you have to do is fill in the blank. So instead of 30 minutes, 5 minutes or 7 minutes, you're sitting going through this message, and you can get the information out there. One is it gives you the ability to focus on the more important things, to making sure your community is safe and your tenants are safe. The other part is it gives your tenants the opportunity to get information faster, and it's going to be more fluid because they're not waiting for you to get the information out, waiting that half hour, 45 minutes to get the information out. So what I encourage you to do is when you develop these templates, develop numerous, not one or two, I would say 6 or 7 pre-drafted messages based on the events that you're going to encounter throughout the year, and keep them close to you. So all you have to do is go and massage them and input just the basic information, and then you can send it out. It's going to save you time. It's going to provide that opportunity for you to be more effective, and your community is going to be more informed. When we look at just a case study we'll talk about today, a wildfire or a wild alert scenario, when we look at communication, the Housing Authority receives wildfire warning from Tribal Emergency Management. What does housing do? You're going to activate your plan that's in place, right? You're going to mobilize your staff according to whatever those emergency protocols are, right? When you mobilize your staff, there may be an evacuation process in place, right? So transportation assistance may be needed to reach the disabled residents or the vulnerable residents or even kids. So you're going to activate all that, and then you're going to message it out. You're going to message it out and let people know what's going on. You're going to let them know what you're doing. You may go door to door and let them know the process that's there. And then when the wildfire threatens your community, you're already in that rapid alert for all your residents, right? And you want to require a coordinated approach. And by doing this, you're going to use multiple communication channels simultaneously, right? The multiple channels sending that information out. Once you've activated the plan, you've put in motion the evacuation process, and then you're getting the messaging out, right? The messaging comes out simultaneously. Once you start activating that plan and getting everything moving, then you want to make sure you get that messaging and deployment information out so the community knows what's going on. And they'll also know that you're on top of the issue and you're looking out for their safety. Some of the challenges that I also recognize and we all deal with is rural connectivity. Being a rural environment, sometimes that's a a challenge, and especially during severe weather events that are just come throughout us, throughout the year. One of the things that we found is the mules from the cell phone companies. Those are the mobile towers that they'll bring out with you. Connect with your cell phone providers. One of the things that I would recommend to you is public safety with all the cell phone providers. Their cell phones have a component to it where they get first priority during storms or during critical events, right? As housing authority, you are a emergency responder for your community, working with public safety as close as you do. Talk to your tribe, talk to your whoever handles your cell phones to make sure that your cell phone is part of that emergency access, right? So the general citizen may not have, their phone may not work as strong because the public safety phones are given priority. See if your work cell phone can be put into, or when they purchase that phone, it falls under the public safety umbrella when they purchase those phones in that line within your tribe. So that way your phone gets the enhanced capability because you're an emergency responder for your community, right? So you may not get your secretary's cell phone to that level, right? But the key people within housing get those phones underneath the public safety umbrella, so your phones are through the cell phone system can be enhanced, right? The other piece is, we hear it now with, going to space. There's a bunch of satellites up there, numerous satellites. Is Starlink. Starlink is really a lifesaver. I know people are starting to use that now for their everyday internet and internet capabilities. I know here in Florida, Starlink is something that I think is the way of the future, and it's something you may want to look at investing in just to have, as a runoff. You may not use it all the time on an everyday basis, but for an emergency standpoint, Starlink can be utilized, and also your satellite phones. Satellite phones are, they're still usable, and there's still a purpose that you can use a satellite phone. So there's different ways that you want to look at emergency communication when you're in a rural setting to kind of mitigate those connectivity issues. Power outages, of course, is always an issue. One of the things we did here in Florida is because the tribe separated in different locations, different power companies. We went to the power companies and we identified the areas that were important to the tribe when it comes to life safety. So the clinic, the public safety building, our shelters, they were all put on priority when it came to power companies. Power companies want to work with you. So get with your power company and identify those buildings that are critical and they're essential for the tribe's success. But be realistic, right? Don't put the preschool in that category if that's not a critical building that's used for the success of your community. So when you have housing and you have an elder building that has critical injured or critical ill people in that building, work with your IHS clinic on your reservation, but also go and talk to the power company and see if there's something they can do to identify that building as a priority to turn on that power as soon as the event goes by, to make it priority. So it's an essential building to turn up. So you have an opportunity at housing to identify those buildings and work with power companies to see if they're willing to assist you in identifying what buildings can be turned on first. That's more critical for your community. Again, we talked a little bit about language barrier. That's unique to every community and every tribal community. It's not all the same. So that can be a barrier when it comes to communication. So you want to make sure from a housing standpoint, who's in your community. Do they speak the tribal language? Do they speak English? Do they understand? Are they deaf? They could be deaf and they may not, they may need some special attention there. So you want to make sure that you recognize that through your communication planning. When we look at creating emergency operation plans, these are important. Again, we talked the last 2 days about plans. The EOP is just as important. It's relative to the risk assessment plan and to the THIRA. The THIRA is actually included in the emergency operation plan. It really delineates the roles and responsibility for everybody within your housing unit. So you want to make sure you have an emergency operation plan. If Juliet and Tiffany, if I can ask you just in the chat, do you have a housing emergency operation plan for the organizations that you work for? If you can just put yes or no, just for my own edification, because I've run into housing departments who leave the emergency operation plans to the emergency managers or the emergency management department, and sometimes that's a shortcoming because housing is relying on emergency management, and emergency management isn't necessarily staffed at times where they need to be. So housing is the one who suffers. So it's something that you want to make sure your emergency operation plans is in place. And really what it creates is a step-by-step procedure that's going to alert not just your staff, make sure your staff's taken care of, but it's going to alert your residents and your surrounding community on what you're doing, what's happening, what you're going to do, and how you're going to mitigate the issues as you move forward. As we look at the emergency operation plan framework, there's continue with the components. There's the continuity of operation. These are procedures for maintaining essential housing services. What are you shutting down and what are you going to continue to do, right? So when a hurricane comes, tribal housing doesn't operate the same as it does on an average day basis. They don't go around changing light bulbs or dealing with those minor issues. If your door's, stuck or making noise, they're not going to come out and fix that because they're going to look at the priority in the emergency itself. So what are those essential services during the emergency that you're going to address, right? Resource management, we talked a lot yesterday about that. That's an important piece. That's going to be part of your EOP. And then recovery and demobilization, right? How do you transition back to normalcy, right? That should be part of your plan. That should be part of your plan so everybody's aware of it. What is that roadmap for you to transition back to recovery and demobilization? How do you get back to normalcy? How are we doing it? Who needs to be involved? Who needs to know? And who are we going to share this plan with, right? That is important when we look at the framework and the overall framework from an EOP. Some of the housing specific risks, again, power loss, water system failure, structural damage, fire hazards. These are the four that I've run into over my career are really the main key risks that I see that are out there. But I put them out there just to recognize the fact that it's not only these four. You want to think outside the box. You're not going to be able to identify all of them, but you can identify ones that are specific for your community. And again, it's not going to happen overnight. You may be driving along the street and you think it's something you can add to the list. This list should be fluid when it comes to that framework, and you can continue to add to it, but you can also prioritize it, which ones are going to be more prevalent than the others. So when we look at the scenario planning, this is a scenario that that I would just put across to you today, and ask you to ask yourself the question, what do you do? What do you do if the shelter has issues, right? If you have to do an evacuation from your housing units and the shelter is something you're responsible for, or the shelter is within your housing units, how do you handle that? What's your redundancy? What's your backup plan, right? So in this particular planning scenario, right, you're going to identify community buildings that are a high ground and can serve as a temporary shelter, right? You're going to consider the capacity, the accessibility, what amenities are there. Can there be food be cooked? Are there showers? Is there enough room to put bedding down? You're going to establish the needs that are there. Do you need beds? Do you need food? Do you need water? How's the sanitation? Medical support. Can you get prescriptions and different medicines there? Do you have police that can be stationed there? Do you have fire that can be stationed there? Will you have a doctor? Maybe your tribal health clinic can bring a doctor and put a doctor at the shelter. And that's one thing we learned. The the doctor for the tribe who runs Health and Human Services, she identified that it would be more prevalent to have a doctor inside the shelter. And that's what she did. So we had EMS personnel, we had police, and we had a doctor there. And it really created a good foundation to support the members that were there and also the staff. So from a housing standpoint, these are questions you can ask your health providers. You can ask your public safety, your emergency people, and see if they can accommodate those issues for you. Can they put a doctor in there, especially if you know your tenants better than them, right? Sometimes when you go to a shelter, it's not comfortable. It's not something that is going to be all bells and whistles where there's recliners and the beds are at the highest level, right? A shelter is a shelter. It's a temporary establishment that keeps us out of harm's way. However, we can plan to have it staffed with the right personnel. So sometimes if you identify the people that are going to go from a housing unit into a shelter, you can facilitate that for them, for your clients and your tenants. You can facilitate that by working with your clinic staff to make sure that a doctor or even EMS personnel could be within the shelter, right? Again, create a family reunification process. This is so important. We learn this through active shooters with children, right? Where is everybody going to meet up at? Where does the connectivity of the families that are separated come together? So creating a family reunification process is important. Where do people go? Because when a crisis happens, everybody's blowing up the phones. Everybody's, driving to a location and they want their relative. They want to know their relative's okay. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But from a housing standpoint, you're in charge of your tenants. You want to create a reunification process so it streamlines it to where it doesn't create more crisis for you. This is all about working through a crisis without creating more of a crisis for yourself. You want to navigate this to get back to normalcy with as least stress and fluid. You want this to be fluid to where you can navigate this, you can manage it, right? And it's a process that's going to be successful to keep your tenants safe. When you look at the Housing Authority Emergency Operation Planning Guide, folks, the bottom line for this is you create it, educate your staff on it, provide it to your community, let everybody know, get feedback, create checklists, the templates, create a good fluid document that everybody can have input in. You can use it as a framework that will help you guide every day. And then when the emergency hits, it'll help you guide through the emergency, where it's really an EOP, strategic planning and implementation book or Bible. It's a document that you definitely can learn from. You can use. Your tenants will appreciate it. If they read it, they will appreciate it, and they will understand really the amount of pressure that you're under, and they will identify that concierge service that you're trying to provide your community by reading this document. Knowing what needs to be in this document, there's no doubt in my mind whoever reads it will see the worth that you bring to the table as a housing authority, and really the forefront of their safety is paramount to you. So I think it's something, if you share it, develop it and share it and accept feedback from it, I think you can create a dynamic solution for your community. I talked a little bit about this earlier, and something in your EOP, I think it's important for at least non-tribal members to understand what those cultural considerations are. But I also recognize sometimes you're not going to put that in a policy. So you want to make sure whatever those community decisions are from a cultural aspect or sacred sites that are there that need to be protected, or information needs to be passed along, or healing practices, you want to make sure that information gets to the right people and it gets to them accurately, right? So if it's not in your policy, which I think you should add it into your policy if it doesn't violate any of your traditional cultural backgrounds. But if it does, just please make sure that your staff understands and your staff knows what cultural considerations they have to take to respect your heritage and your traditions and your community and the elders as you navigate through the crisis. This is an important piece that I think we don't do enough of, and that's really training drills and community education, right? I think we do a good job overall, but I think, and I would like to see more of it. I think the community would benefit from more training, and it's really all about keeping people aware, right? And it's not a one-off where we do one training and say, yeah, we checked the box, we did a training. Many times I saw that, and I saw the mentality to where it was like, okay, we did that, check the box, it's done, right? I think we have to force the issue. We have to manage ourselves a little better to provide that training to the community and education through the community, regardless if it's every other month or every quarter. We want to build awareness. We want to make sure they understand our emergency preparedness information. We want to develop skills that they may need, right? From first aid skills, CPR. Those are different skills that we can provide if we partner with the fire department. Tribal Housing can bring the fire department in to do first aid training, stop the bleed training, CPR. Work with your partners. Put it into your plan to work with your partners. Don't live in the silo. Bring them in and arm your tenants with first aid training, right? You also want to practice those drills. You want to do simulations with them, right? One of the things that we did was for the police training, we brought them in and we would do driver training with them, or we would do active shooter training. We had a system called Milo where, it was an interactive system where the police officers, when we did training, they used this system. It was scenario based, right? And it was a screen, multiple screens where they had to interact with a scenario, and they had to decide if they were going to use voice commands, any of their weapons that they have on their belt. Is it going to raise to the use of deadly force, or is it just talking to somebody? We were able to evaluate their interpersonal skills. And then we put them in a position where they had to write the report after they went through the scenario. We did that with the community. We invited the community in to go through the same training the police officers did. So what I encourage you to do is put the training out there for your members and your tenants that your staff goes through. Let them see the good work and the foundation that you're building for the housing authority. Let them see that work that you're doing to prepare your staff and prepare your program to take care of them. And they will appreciate, number one, but they will also partner with you, and they will recognize the fact that what you're doing for them is definitely needed. And I think it goes a long way when you do stuff like that. You also want to redefine your plans. You want to always evaluate them. You want to evaluate and always improve where you can. Again, I think it's a fluid document. I don't think it's something you just put on a shelf. I'm a big believer that you can take all these documents and all these plans, and you can continue, if you know them, you continue to evaluate them throughout the year, or even quarterly or biannually. And you can do lessons learned after the event. So don't just do it and shut it off. Do it, make it part of your mindset, make it part of your life, make it part of your community. Emergency preparedness training, again, one of the things that you could do, you could create calendars and then put the calendars out to your community, right? Create magnet calendars and then put the events out. We talked a little bit about in the last slide. This is the way you market all the work that you're doing, and you're arming your community, you're arming your housing tenants with safety tools that can help them, right? So you can put out a calendar, you can plan it out for the year, right? Like in this particular case, in January, they're going to do personal emergency plan workshop. In March, they're going to do fire drills. May, CPR training. In July, you're going to do a severe weather tabletop exercise, right? You can plan this out so people see and they understand what to expect. And sometimes it provides them the opportunity to be part of it, and they want more. They want more, so you can build on the next year and the next year. So if you really market it and you get their buy-in, I think it can be very successful for every tribal housing authority. One of the things that we did with the officers, we put the officers in a position where they'd sit with the elders and go over to the elder center and have breakfast and lunch with them, and the youth center with the kids, just to sit around in a non-threatening setting to educate them. And through that process, then we'd bring them back. We'd talk to them about, what they learned, so we can then evaluate policy on how we did things. I encourage you, if you're not doing it, lean on the resources that are in your community. Send your staff out there to talk to every facet of the community, and bring those lessons and those stories back to your community and see how they can fit in your emergency operations plan. I think we can learn from each other. We can build off that education piece from the past, and we can see how it's going to fit into planning and how we provide that level of service to them. So it's not just your profession, right? So, and that was the message that I learned through my career as a police officer. You get a lot of training and a lot of stuff is ingrained on how to do things. But the reality is that's training, and you're being taught something that might not necessarily fit into a community. So you had to kind of massage it. You had to take that training that you had and massage it based on what you learned in the community, how the community was. And then you take those principles and you fit it into the community so it works for the community. I can sit in a classroom all day. I can sit on this webinar all day, and I can tell you how things are supposed to be done. If I don't know anything about your community, it's probably going to fail. So what I would tell you is send your people out into the community, let them know understand what the community is about, what works in the community, what works for your tenants, right? And then come back and develop a good, sound policy from you being the subject matter expert in housing, them being the subject matter expert in the community, putting them two together to create such a dynamic plan that you've been successful in saving lives, saving property, and just taking care of your tenants. This is just a housing wide evacuation drill scenario. Again, you can do a lot of scenarios. You can just talk for 5-10 minutes when you do a community meeting, and just ask people to think, right? If there was a housing wide evacuation drill scenario in your housing department, this is for you on the webinar, right? What would you do right now? What plans would you put in place, right? What objectives would you put in place? How are you going to tell your community they got to get out of their houses, right? How is that evacuation going to look, right? Are they going to listen to you, right? What are they supposed to do? Where are they going to go? Do you know where they're going, right? So you can do these scenarios on a regular basis, then it'll help you identify gaps within your community. And they're important. I put slides like this on there just to provide you that opportunity where it's simple. It's simple. Take it, use it, put it in your community, and do these drills so you can control the environment and you can see what level you're at. And then you can determine what you need to do better from a housing authority. When you do your training, you want to look at the fact of, when you teach kids, teaching adults are different. So you want to look at compartmentalizing when you do your instructional. Do juvenile training, right? Do the youth training in a certain way to where it's just the youth in there, right? Do the elderly training differently than you do the regular community training, right? So compartmentalize your training. If you can do that, I think it works. I think you learn from your customers that way. So when you do your training and you develop policies, I think you have to incorporate those compartmentalized topics that are within your organization and within your community, and deliver that training at a level that's going to meet your customer, right? Teach it to your audience, right? And you have to be able to identify your audience and what they're capable of learning and at what level. The general population who is very vast in the internet and they know all the emojis and all these different buzzwords that are out there are not the same as the elders who aren't involved in social media, don't have a cell phone or an iPad, and even the youth, right? The youth these days are very intelligent, and we all can learn from them. We all know they're the future, but I will tell you, even my own kids, I can talk to them and I'm learning from them every day. And so when you do your training, give those kids the opportunity to tell you what they see, what they think, and how they think things are going, because you're going to be able to get some answers from them, just like the elders and even the disability, to help fine tune your policy, to make your policy very dynamic so it's at the high level. This is about a way of life. Preparing for all hazards is about a way of life. It's just, part of the process, right? Keep it at the forefront of everything you do. and make it appropriate for your organization and for your community, right? Signage, very important. Language, put it in multiple language if you need to, right? I've been through reservations that have tribal language on street signs, right? They have the English and then they have the language, the tribal language. Make it work for your community. It's all about a way of life. It's all about keeping it at the forefront. So it's always on everybody's mind, and it's not new and it's not scary, right? Again, living in crisis is stressful. No one wants to be in crisis. No one wants to deal with a crisis, right? No one wants to deal with the bad. But if we can prepare and just make it part of our life and part of our everyday being, then it's not so bad and we can accept that. You want to build community response teams. This is an opportunity where if you have the participation, you can get the community to create their own teams and you can help guide them. From a housing standpoint, create team leaders in your environment, right? And then train them on specific things that you want that team to do, right? Team leaders that are going to help evacuations, right? You want to develop those critical emergency skills for that training. You want to look at what resources you can provide to them and take those community volunteers that live in your residence, right? And create your own community emergency response team, right? That, as you may know, is CERT. Create your own teams within your housing authority, right? That would be so dynamic to where you have residents helping residents and everybody's working together to keep your community safe. And that will align with your traditional aspects in every community. It will align with just taking care of people and neighbors being friendly to neighbors and looking out for each other. And that's really what it's all about. It's preparing yourselves to make sure everybody's safe, leaning on each other to get through the hard times, and then celebrating the good times. As we move forward, again, we went through the webinar today. You want to look at the timeline over your next 30 days. Look at what you can do over the next 30 days to adjust personal preparedness plans within your housing authority. Feel free to call me. There's a lot of resources out there. My email will be here on the next couple of slides. You can text me, email me. It's something that, we win when we all work together. And so just know you're not alone and know that there's a lot of support out there. There's a lot of things that you can do to make sure that your community is taken care of. Some of the tribal specific emergency resources that are there. Of course, FEMA's going through some transition now. That's still a big question mark in the future. But there's still a lot of resources out there now that you can use. They have a lot of great training that you can use that's free, that's on the internet. CDC has tribal preparedness. Of course, about HUD. Red Cross has a tribal Native American section that will respond out to you. You can reach out to them from a housing perspective and get all that lined up for your community before something happens. So those are just some resources that are there. Again, here's a template that you can use. Make the decision. In the next 30 days, I'm going to make an assessment. I want to make some changes. I want to develop new resources, and I want better community engagement, right? You have the ability to do that as a leader in the housing authority, and you have that opportunity to make your organization better. One of the things that I would tell you is that, and I said this in the beginning, is that somebody along the lines saw something special with you to employ you as a tribal housing authority employee, right? That means something. You should be proud of that. But somebody saw something special in you. They know that you're going to be there for them. You're a service-oriented program. You're a program that is important. It is valued. And whoever gave you that opportunity to be where you're at saw and recognized that you're going to be able to take care of people. Now it's your job, and it's your job to take that opportunity. And I challenge you to take the opportunity you have to maximize your all-hazard preparedness for your community and for your housing authority that you work for. In closing, again, it's about building resiliency within your community. The 4 words that I would profess to you is prepare, engage, adapt, and then practice, right? You want to develop and prepare your plans. You want to engage with your staff and everyone in your community and your housing authority. You want to adapt, continuously evaluate things, improve it through feedback and through your experience, and then practice. Test it, refine your emergency procedures, and always go through that process of preparing, engaging, adapting, and practice. You will become such a dynamic housing authority. You will be the leading housing authority, not just in Indian country. I believe you'll be a leading housing authority out in the rest of the country. I've passed my 90 minutes. It's 94. If you have any questions, you can feel free to email me. My email and phone number is in the chat. You can text me as well. This is my contact number again. And I appreciate and I'm honored to pass along this information and train with you today. And I look forward to tomorrow, the fourth webinar of the series, All Hazard Preparedness and Partnership Series. Brooke, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. I apologize. I'm 5 minutes and 19 seconds over.
Totally fine. Well, not a problem at all. Another fantastic presentation. I always really enjoy your series. Thank you so much. Folks, if you want to show him some love in our webinar feedback survey, that I'm going to put the link for you right in the chat now. It is a different survey each day of the webinar. So even if you were kind enough to do it yesterday, or perhaps you did it on Monday, if you wouldn't mind completing it once again, it is different surveys for each day of the webinar series. It takes about 3 minutes to do tops, and it is completely anonymous, so you don't have to feel weird about like your name or your email being connected to it or anything like that. It's just a tool that we use so that we at the NLC know how that we can improve ways that we're already making y'all happy as our audience, and we do share the feedback with our instructors, so you can show Will some love in the feedback survey. And again, that link is for you in the chat. We hope you can join us for our next webinar. Like Will said, that's going to be tomorrow. And this will be day 4 of the 4-day series. So this will conclude the All Hazard Preparedness and Partnership webinar series. If you did miss any of the ones leading up to today or tomorrow, you can find all that information in the courses section. And I did post the recordings for day 1 and day 2 in that course. So you can catch all of that. It's just in the courses section right here on the learning platform. But we hope you can check out this as well as our other recorded webinars. We have a playlist on our YouTube channel, the Cathedra Webinar Archive. It hosts our webinars for about the last 2 years. We have recordings. I encourage you to go through that resource. You know, YouTube is completely free for you to use. And we do like 2 webinars a week all the time. So there's quite a bit of content for you in there. And then if you need help finding anything or you want to know if something's available, you can always email me. I'll put my email into the chat as well. But please feel free to check out our other upcoming training events. We post about them to our social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. If you are a podcast fan, we do have our in-house produced podcast, the Hope a Thing, a Native American podcast. You can listen to that wherever you listen to your podcasts. And then we also have a playlist for that on our YouTube channel as well. So if you're somebody who actually likes to watch the videos and see our special guests, you can find that on our YouTube also. But that is all we have for you today, folks. We're so grateful that you could tune in for today's webinar. We hope you see you back tomorrow, Friday the 13th, but we're going to make it lucky. But have a fantastic rest of your day. I am going to leave the chat kind of open, so y'all have access to those links both in the chat as well as the shared notes section. But I am going to go ahead and turn off the recording.